The battle for Willow Creek, a fight for freedom by the lake. The summer sun was sinking behind the pines, painting Willow Creek's glassy lake in shades of amber and rose. I'd just unpacked the last box in my new home, a cozy two-story cottage with a wide porch overlooking the water. At 55, after 3 decades as a Manhattan attorney, I was done with the city's chaos. Willow Creek, a quiet lakeside community in upstate New York, was my escapee, a place to grill by the water, read novels in the evening glow, and maybe even dust off my old fishing rod like I used to with my dad. That first evening, I built a small campfire in my backyard, a neat circle of stones holding flames no bigger than a pizza pan. As I skewered a couple of burgers, the crackling fire felt like a promise of peace. Then Margaret Hensley stormed in, and my dream of tranquility became a battle I never could have predicted. Margaret charged across my lawn, her heels sinking into the grass, a thick binder of homeowners association rules clutched like a shield. "You're violating every standard in Willow Creek," she snapped, jabbing a manicured finger at my tiny fire as if I'd ignited a forest. Her collie, trailing behind, seemed to mirror her indignation, its fluffy tail flicking with disdain. I stood, puzzled but polite. "This is my property, ma'am. It's just a cooking fire." Her eyes narrowed, and before I could say more, she pulled a megaphone from her tote bag. Yes, a megaphone, and blared, "You're endangering this entire community." The sound echoed across the lake, startling a flock of ducks. Then, with a flourish, she dialed 911, reporting me like I was torching the neighborhood. Sirens wailed in the distance, and I realized Willow Creek wasn't the serene haven I'd bought into. 2 police officers pulled up, their cruisers' lights flashing off the water. Officer Daniels, a grizzled veteran, and his younger partner inspected my fire, contained, safe, with a bucket of water nearby. Daniels rubbed his temples. "Private property, ma'am. No laws broken here." Margaret's face flushed beet red, but she didn't relent, flipping through her binder and muttering about community aesthetics. The younger officer, clearly tired of her theatrics, suggested I douse the fire to avoid more drama. I complied, splashing water over the embers. As the officers drove off, Margaret stepped closer, her smile cold as lake ice. "Welcome to Willow Creek, Mr. Sullivan," she said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "We have our ways here. You'd best learn them." Her collie shot me a final glare before they vanished into the twilight. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Margaret's confidence, her iron grip on the neighborhood, gnawed at me. I dragged my laptop to the kitchen table and dug into my closing documents, deeds, surveys, and HOA agreements. As a retired attorney, I knew how to spot trouble in fine print. By 3 a.m., I'd found discrepancies in the HOA's lake access rules that didn't align with my property's rights. This wasn't just about a campfire. Margaret was guarding something bigger, and I was determined to find out what. The next morning, a yellow envelope was taped to my front door. An HOA violation notice, signed by Margaret in looping cursive, fined me $75 for unauthorized outdoor lighting from my porch lamp. The absurdity escalated daily. $50 for a mailbox misaligned by half an inch, $100 for grass overgrown by 2 days, even $25 for inappropriate patio chair placement. Every dawn, Margaret patrolled past my house, her collie prancing beside her, armed with a camera, measuring tape, and clipboard. She'd pause to snap photos, documenting my every move like a private investigator. It wasn't just harassment, it was a calculated campaign to make me feel like an outsider in my own home. I refused to crumble. Instead, I fought back with the tools I knew best: research and evidence. Evenings became a ritual of poring over the HOA bylaws, cross-referencing them with state and local laws. Many of Margaret's rules weren't in the official documents, they were amendments she'd pushed through without proper community votes. I drove to the county records office, spending hours sifting through dusty files from the 1970s when Willow Creek was developed. In a faded master deed, I uncovered a legal goldmine. 25 properties, including mine, held independent lake access rights, free from HOA control. Yet Margaret's HOA had been charging us lake maintenance fees, $12,000 a year for some families for decades, raking in hundreds of thousands. Then came a chilling discovery. While backing out of my driveway, I noticed a glint on a utility pole across the street. It was a high-end surveillance camera, its lens trained on my yard and lakefront. I called my friend Tom, who runs a security firm. He arrived within hours, whistling at the setup. "This is a $1,200 piece of tech," he said, tracing its wireless signal to a receiver somewhere nearby. Motion activated, HD, the works. Someone's got you under a microscope. I snapped photos, my anger simmering. Margaret wasn't just controlling, she was spying, breaking laws to keep her grip on Willow Creek. With the deed and camera evidence, I requested an emergency HOA meeting to discuss lake rights. Margaret shot it down, claiming my concerns were frivolous and threatening $200 fines for wasting community time. Undeterred, I crafted an email to every resident, carefully worded to share my findings without accusing her directly. I framed it as a neighborly heads-up about our property rights, citing the 1970s deed. The response was explosive. My phone buzzed with calls from neighbors, stunned and furious. Ellen, a retired teacher, had paid $9,000 in fees since moving in. Mike, a mechanic, confirmed his deed matched mine. A nurse named Carla said she'd always suspected the fees were fishy but feared Margaret's wrath. We were forming a quiet rebellion. Margaret hit back with venom. She sent a community-wide email, painting me as a radical bent on crashing property values. Then she escalated, suspending all lake access for safety reviews and sending legal notices to every neighbor who'd contacted me, threatening lawsuits for community disruption. Her most audacious move was a $60,000 bond requirement for anyone challenging HOA policies, a clear attempt to scare us and tolerance it. Fear spread like poison. Ellen called, voice trembling, saying she couldn't risk a lawsuit. Mike's wife begged him to back off. Carla stopped answering my texts. In days, my 12 allies shrank to 3. Walks around Willow Creek became lonely. Neighbors crossed the street to avoid me, whispering about that troublemaker Sullivan. The isolation stung more than I expected. I was on the verge of surrender, sitting on my deck, staring at the lake now off limits. The sunset, once a symbol of peace, felt mocking. Then, a text from an unknown number lit up my phone. Know where the lake fees went? Meet me at the library, 2 p.m. tomorrow. Alone. My gut screamed trap, but curiosity won. I arrived early, scanning the library's quiet corners. At 2 p.m., an elderly man in a tweed cap approached. George, a former HOA treasurer from the 1990s, slid a manila envelope across the table. Margaret's been robbing us blind, he whispered. Inside were financial records, budgets, invoices, bank statements. They showed Margaret had spent $180,000 of HOA funds on cameras, lawyers to expand her power, and consultants who taught her how to intimidate dissenters. She'd even funneled money to a landscaping firm owned by her cousin, disguised as community beautification. This wasn't just about lake right, it was systemic theft. George's documents were my ammunition, but I needed a battlefield. Margaret provided it, announcing an emergency HOA meeting to vote on banning me from community facilities and imposing new penalties for disruptive residents. She thought she'd crush me publicly, but I saw my chance. I spent 2 days building a presentation, organizing the deed, financial records, and camera photos into a clear, devastating narrative. I created charts showing each household's overpaid fees $5,000 to $15,000 and timelines of Margaret's spending. I rehearsed until midnight, knowing I'd get one shot to expose her. Saturday arrived, gray and tense. The community center was packed, every chair filled, the air thick with anticipation. Margaret stood at the front, flanked by her loyal board members, her voice booming through a microphone. She called me a dangerous outsider intent on destroying Willow Creek's harmony, urging a vote to strip my lake rights and fine me $10,000. Her presentation was slick, manipulative, and designed to make dissenters look selfish. But the HOA bylaws, which I'd memorized, gave me the right to respond. When I stood, Margaret's smirk faltered. He's forfeited that right, she snapped. But Ellen, bolstered by newfound courage, shouted, let him speak. The room murmured in agreement. I plugged in my laptop and began. Slide by slide, I unveiled the truth. The 1970s deed granting lake rights to 25 properties, invoices proving Margaret's $180,000 spending spree, photos of her cameras spying on private homes. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I showed a chart of overpaid fees $7,000 for Ellen, $12,000 for Mike's family. The final slide was a timeline of Margaret's reign, each year marked with another abuse of power. When I sat, the room was silent, the weight of betrayal sinking in. Then Carla stood. I've paid $8,000 for a lake I own? Mike followed, voice shaking. She threatened my kids' playground access when I asked questions. One by one, neighbors shared stories of intimidation fines for asking about budgets, threats for planting unapproved flowers. The dam broke. Margaret grabbed her microphone, but someone I later learned had unplugged it. Her shouts were drowned by the crowd's rising voices. Ellen called for a vote of no confidence in Margaret's leadership. Mike proposed an independent audit. Both passed with roars of approval. By the meeting's end, Margaret was stripped of her HOA presidency, the board dissolved, and a 5-member interim committee was elected to rebuild Willow Creek's governance. As we left, I caught Margaret's eye. She looked smaller, deflated, her empire in ruins. The next month was a whirlwind. The committee hired an accounting firm, whose audit confirmed $165,000 in misspent fees. Every cent was refunded with interest. A real estate attorney reviewed the HOA's policies, voiding Margaret's illegal rules. The cameras came down, their wires cut like the strings of a puppet master. Margaret hired a lawyer, threatening to sue, but her bluster-fizzled residents now knew the truth. By summer's end, she listed her house and moved, her collie's bark fading into memory. 3 months after that first campfire, I lit another by the lake. Neighbors gathered, bringing burgers, beers, and stories. Ellen toasted to freedom. Mike's kids ran along the shore, finally free to play. Carla shared how she'd framed her refund check as a reminder of our victory. As flames danced, reflecting off the water, I felt something deeper than relief belonging. Willow Creek wasn't just a place anymore. It was a community we'd fought for and won. This wasn't about a campfire. It was about dignity, about refusing to let a bully steal what's yours. Have you ever faced someone like Margaret, wielding power to silence and control? Share your stories in the comments. Was I right to dig in, or should I have played nice to keep the peace? Let's talk about fighting injustice. When do you stand up, and when do you walk away? Your voice matters.